I'm back with the next installment of my trucker horror stories, and this time, I'm using a different voice to bring these tales to life. These aren't just campfire stories. They're real accounts from truckers I've met and talked to from all over the US, men and women who've seen things most folks wouldn't believe. Strange lights, shadowy figures, things moving just outside the reach of the headlights. These stories stick with you. If you enjoy these, make sure to subscribe and share them with others, not just for the scares, but so folks out there can understand the tough, often lonely life of truckers on the open road. This isn't just horror. It's reality for some.
My name's Carl Hensley, and I've been driving trucks for 23 years. It's a solitary life, but I've always liked it that way. The open road, the hum of the engine, and the endless stretch of asphalt give me space to think. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, raised by a single mom who worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat. My older brother, Tommy, was my hero back then. He was 6 years older, always looking out for me, teaching me how to throw a baseball or sneak cookies from the jar without mom noticing. When I was 12, Tommy enlisted in the army, promising he'd come back with stories of adventure. He didn't. His convoy hit an IED in Iraq, and that was that. Losing him left a hole in me, one I've never quite filled. Trucking became my escape, a way to keep moving so the past couldn't catch up. Last summer, I was hauling a load of produce from Sacramento to Salt Lake City, taking Route 50 through Nevada. They call it the loneliest road in America, and it's no exaggeration. Miles of desert, jagged mountains, and not a soul in sight for hours. It was June 22nd, 2025, and the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. I was about halfway through Nevada, near Austin, when a yellow school bus passed me going the other way. It was an old model, probably from the 80s, with chipped paint and a rattling engine. Through the windows, I saw kids, maybe 30 of them elementary school age, singing, laughing, and bouncing in their seats. A couple waved at me, and I gave a quick honk of my horn, which made them cheer louder. It was odd, though. A school bus out here, this late in the evening, in the middle of summer? I figured it was a church group or a summer camp outing, but something about it stuck with me. I kept driving, the bus fading in my rear view. About an hour later, I pulled into a rest stop to stretch my legs and grab a coffee from my thermos. The desert was cooling off, and the stars were starting to poke through the sky. I leaned against my rig, a 2019 Freightliner, and thought about Tommy. I always do when it's quiet like that. I wondered what he'd think of me now, still running from everything, still chasing the horizon. I shook it off, climbed back into the cab, and hit the road again. It was past midnight when I saw it. The same yellow bus, parked on the shoulder, its hazard lights blinking weakly. I recognized the chipped paint and the dented rear bumper. My headlights swept over it as I slowed down, and I heard those voices again. Kids singing, laughing just like before. The sound was faint but unmistakable, carrying through the still desert air. I pulled over about 50 yards ahead, my heart thudding. Something wasn't right. A bus full of kids, broken down in the middle of nowhere, at this hour? I grabbed my flashlight and a crowbar from the cab, just in case, and walked back toward the bus. The singing grew louder as I approached, a jumbled mix of voices, like a classroom let loose. I called out, "Hello? Anyone need help?" The voices stopped, all at once, like someone hit mute. The silence was heavy, pressing against my ears. I shone my flashlight through the windows, expecting to see kids ducking under seats or a frazzled driver waving me over. Nothing. The bus was empty. Rows of cracked vinyl seats, dust floating in the beam of my light, and not a single person inside. My stomach twisted. I'd heard those voices clear as day. I climbed aboard, the steps creaking under my boots. The air inside was cold, unnaturally so, and smelled of old leather and something sharp like ozone. "Hello," I said again, my voice echoing. No answer. I walked down the aisle, shining my light on each seat. There were signs of use, crayon marks on one seat, a crumpled juice box under another, but no kids, no driver, no bags. At the back, I found a small, faded photo wedged into a seat cushion. It showed a group of kids, maybe 8 or 9 years old, standing in front of the bus. They were smiling, dressed in 80s clothes, acid-washed jeans, neon shirts. The driver, a middle-aged man with a mustache, stood beside them, his arm around one of the kids. On the back of the photo, in smudged ink, was written, Camp Silver Lake, 1987. I pocketed the photo, my hands shaking. I didn't know what to make of it, but I knew I had to get out of there. As I turned to leave, I heard it, a giggle, soft and high-pitched, coming from the front of the bus. I froze. My flashlight beam darted around, catching nothing but empty seats. Then, another giggle, this time from behind me. I spun around, my crowbar raised, but there was no one there. The air grew colder, my breath visible in the beam of my light. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice cracking. No answer, just another giggle, closer now, right beside my ear. I bolted for the door, my boots pounding the floor. As I reached the steps, the bus door slammed shut in front of me. I yanked at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Behind me, the giggles turned into whispers, overlapping, unintelligible, like a crowd of kids surrounding me. I pounded on the door, shouting, "Let me out!" The whispers grew louder, angrier, until they were a deafening roar in my head. I closed my eyes, gripping the crowbar, and threw my shoulder against the door. It gave way, and I stumbled out into the desert, falling to my knees on the gravel. The whispers stopped. I looked back at the bus, its hazard lights still blinking, but it was silent now, just an empty shell. I ran to my truck, my heart hammering, and locked myself inside. I sat there, catching my breath, trying to make sense of what had happened. I pulled out the photo and stared at it under the cab's dome light. The kids' faces were so normal. Happy. But something about their eyes seemed off, like they were looking through the camera, not at it. I started the engine and peeled out, not stopping until I reached Fallon, where I pulled into a diner and ordered the strongest coffee they had. The waitress, a woman named Margie with kind eyes, noticed I was shaken. I told her about the bus, leaving out the whispers and the door slamming shut. I didn't want her to think I was crazy. She frowned and said, "Route 50's got stories. People see things out there, especially at night." She leaned in, lowering her voice. Back in '87, a bus from Camp Silver Lake went missing on that road. Kids, driver all gone. They found the bus a week later, empty, no sign of anyone. Never figured out what happened. I felt the blood drain from my face. I showed her the photo, and her eyes widened. "Where'd you get this?" she asked. I told her I found it on the bus. She shook her head, handing it back like it was cursed. "That's them. The Silver Lake kids. You best leave that where you found it." I didn't sleep that night. I kept driving, the photo burning a hole in my pocket. When I got to Salt Lake City, I tried to put it behind me, but I couldn't. I started digging into the Camp Silver Lake disappearance. Old newspaper articles online confirmed Margie's story. In July 1987, a bus carrying 32 kids and their driver, a man named Harold Grayson, vanished on Route 50. The camp was a summer program for underprivileged kids, funded by a local church. The bus was last seen near Austin, heading toward a lake for a field trip. When it didn't arrive, a search was launched. They found the bus a week later, parked on the shoulder, doors open, no signs of struggle. The kids' belongings, backpacks, snacks, a few toys, were still inside, but the passengers were gone. No footprints led away from the bus, no tire tracks other than its own. The case went cold, and people started calling it a mystery, like the Mary Celeste of the desert. I found a forum post from 2012 by a trucker who claimed he saw a yellow bus on Route 50 late at night, heard kids singing, but found it empty when he stopped. Another post, from 2019, described a similar encounter, laughter, then silence, and a bus that seemed abandoned but wasn't quite right. Both drivers mentioned the cold, the feeling of being watched. I wasn't alone, but that didn't make me feel better. A few weeks later, I took another run through Nevada. I told myself I'd avoid Route 50, but a detour would have cost me hours, and I was behind schedule. I drove through the night, my eyes flicking to the shoulder, half expecting to see that bus again. Around 2 a.m., near the same spot, my CB radio crackled to life. I hadn't touched it, and no one had been on the channel all night. A child's voice came through, soft and clear. "Mister, can you help us? We're lost." My hands went cold on the wheel. Another voice joined in, then another, a chorus of kids, all saying the same thing. "We're lost. Help us." I turned off the CB, but the voices kept coming, now from inside the cab. I looked in my mirrors, and there it was, the yellow bus keeping pace behind me, its headlights off but its windows glowing faintly. I floored the gas, my truck roaring, but the bus stayed right there, matching my speed. The voices grew louder, desperate, until they were screaming in my head, "Help US!" I swerved, nearly going off the road, and when I looked back, the bus was gone. The voices stopped. I pulled over, shaking, and sat there until dawn. I haven't driven Route 50 since. I keep the photo in a drawer at home, but sometimes, late at night, I hear those voices again, faint, like they're calling from far away. I think about Tommy, how he'd tell me to face my fears, to figure out what those kids want. But I'm not sure I'm strong enough. I keep wondering if they're still out there, trapped on that road, waiting for someone to find them. Or maybe they're not lost at all. Maybe they're looking for company. If you're driving Route 50 at night and see a yellow bus, keep going. Don't stop, no matter what you hear. And if you find a photo, leave it where it is. Some things are better left alone. The asphalt of Route 285 stretched into the black void of New Mexico's high desert, a ribbon of faded gray under the anemic glow of a crescent moon. I'd been driving since dawn, hauling a load of machine parts from Lubbock to Albuquerque, my rig's engine humming a steady drone that had long since become white noise. My eyes burned, my back ached, and the clock on the dash read 1:47 a.m. The Vaughn rest stop was just ahead, a lonely speck of sodium light off the highway, promising a few hours of shut-eye before the final push. I pulled into the gravel lot, tires crunching, and killed the engine. The silence hit like a physical thing, heavy and absolute. No cars, no trucks, no signs of life, just a cinderblock bathroom building, a couple of picnic tables chained to the ground, and a single flickering street lamp casting long, jagged shadows. The air was cool, smelling of dust and creosote. I locked the cab, reclined the seat, and pulled my jacket over my chest. Sleep came fast, dragging me under like a riptide. I don't know how long I was out before the barking started. Distant at first, faint enough to weave into my dreams, a dog, yapping somewhere out in the scrubland. It was the kind of sound you'd expect in a place like this, maybe a stray hunting for scraps. But it didn't stop. It got louder, sharper, more insistent, pulling me out of sleep like a hook in my gut. I sat up, blinking, my breath fogging in the chilly cab. The clock said 3:12 a.m. The barking was closer now, maybe 100 yards off, cutting through the night with a rhythm that felt wrong. Too steady, too deliberate, like it was trying to say something. I rubbed my eyes and peered through the windshield. Nothing but darkness beyond the rest stop's weak pool of light. No movement, no glint of canine eyes in the brush. Just that damn barking, now so loud it seemed to rattle the windows. I checked the locks, my hand brushing the tire iron I kept wedged beside the seat. Probably just a coyote, I told myself, or some rancher's dog gone feral. But my pulse was ticking up, my mouth dry. The sound was moving, circling the lot, getting closer with every bark. It wasn't just loud, it was aggressive, almost human in its intensity, like it was demanding I open the door. By the time it was right outside the truck, I was wide awake, my heart hammering. The barking had turned into a snarl, low and guttural, vibrating through the metal of the cab. I leaned toward the driver's side window, my breath catching, and looked down. No dog. Just a man. He was standing maybe 2 feet from the door, barefoot in the gravel, his clothes tattered and caked with dirt. His hair was a matted snarl, hanging over his face, but his eyes, Jesus, his eyes, caught the street lamp's glow like a cat's, wild and unblinking. He was hunched forward, hands dangling at his sides, and his lips were pulled back in a snarl, teeth bared, spit gleaming in the corners of his mouth. The growling was coming from him, deep and animal, a sound no human throat should make. I froze, my hand on the tire iron, my brain screaming at me to move, to do something. He didn't blink, didn't shift, just stared up at me, his chest heaving with every growl. His fingers twitched, long and bony, like he was itching to claw at the door. I couldn't tell if he was high, crazy, or something worse, but every instinct I had was yelling to get the hell out. I fumbled for the keys, my hands shaking so bad I nearly dropped them. The growling spiked, turning into a bark, sharp, explosive like a gunshot. I jammed the key into the ignition, the engine roaring to life, and slammed the truck into gear. The tires spun, kicking up gravel, and I peeled out of the lot. The man's face burned into my mind as the headlights swept over him. He didn't move, didn't flinch, just stood there growling, his eyes locked on mine until the darkness swallowed him. I didn't stop until I hit Roswell, 40 miles north, my hands still trembling on the wheel. The adrenaline was fading, leaving me hollow, my thoughts spinning. What the hell was that? A drifter? A tweaker? Or something else, something the desert didn't want to explain? I pulled into a 24-hour diner, ordered coffee I didn't drink, and sat there until dawn, replaying it over and over. The growling. The eyes. The way he'd stood, like he was waiting for me to make a mistake. The next day, I delivered the load in Albuquerque and took a motel room to crash. But sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that barking, saw those glowing eyes. I kept the TV on, some mindless game show, just to drown out the silence. By noon, I was back on the road, heading south, telling myself it was nothing, just a bad night in a bad place. But I couldn't shake it. I needed answers, or at least a way to convince myself I wasn't losing it. I stopped at a gas station in Encino, a few miles from Vaughn, and asked the clerk, a leathery old guy with a cowboy hat, if he'd heard about anything weird at the rest stop. He squinted at me, chewing on a toothpick. Weird how? Guy acting like a dog, I said, feeling stupid as the words left my mouth. Growling, barking, out there in the middle of the night. He didn't laugh, which surprised me. Just leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowing. Folks around here don't talk much about that stretch of 285. Lot of stories, though. Truckers seeing things, lights in the sky, shadows moving where they shouldn't. Some say it's the land itself, cursed or something. Old Navajo fella told me once that place is a thin spot, where things slip through. Things? I asked, my stomach twisting. He shrugged. Don't know. Don't want to know. You saw what you saw. Best to keep driving next time. I left with more questions than answers, my coffee turning cold in my hand. The clerk's words stuck with me, though. Thin spot. I'd heard stories like that before, from other drivers. Places where the world felt wrong, where the rules didn't quite apply. I'd always laughed them off, chalked it up to road fatigue or too much caffeine. But now I wasn't so sure. That night, I couldn't avoid it. My route took me back down 285, past Vaughn. I told myself I'd stay sharp, keep the radio on, maybe roll through without stopping. But as the mile markers ticked by, my headlights cutting through the dark, I felt it again, that heaviness like the air itself was pressing down. The rest stop was coming up, its sodium light flickering like a dying star. I don't know why I slowed down. Curiosity, maybe, or some dumb need to prove it was just a fluke. The lot was empty, same as before, the bathroom building squat and silent. I pulled in, my rig idling, and sat there, hands tight on the wheel. The radio crackled, cutting in and out, a garbled voice fading into static. I scanned the lot, the shadows, the scrubland beyond. Nothing. Then I heard it. A bark. Sharp, distant, out in the dark. My blood went cold. I flicked on the high beams, the light stabbing into the desert, catching only sagebrush and dust. The barking came again, closer, then another, overlapping like a pack was out there circling. I grabbed the tire iron, my breath shallow, and checked the locks again. The radio was dead now, just a low hiss filling the cab. The first one stepped into the light. It was him, the man from before, barefoot, filthy, his eyes glowing like embers. He was growling, low and steady, his body crouched like he was ready to spring. But he wasn't alone. Others came behind him, 3 then 4, all ragged, all snarling, their movements jerky and wrong. They fanned out, surrounding the truck, their eyes never leaving me. One of them barked, a sound that hit like a slap, and I saw their teeth, too long, too sharp, glinting wet in the headlights. Panic took over. I slammed the truck into reverse. The tires screamed as I backed toward the highway, my eyes flicking between the mirrors and the men, or things, closing in. They didn't run like people, they loped, their limbs bending in ways that made my skin crawl. One lunged at the passenger's side door, its claws, raking the metal with a screech that drowned out the engine. I spun the wheel, fishtailing onto the pavement, and floored it, the growling fading behind me as the ice sped north. I didn't stop until I hit a truck stop in Clovis, my hands shaking so bad I could barely hold the wheel. The cab was a mess, coffee spilled, maps crumpled, the tire iron still in my lap. I sat there, panting, trying to piece it together what I'd seen. Men didn't move like that. Men didn't have claws. And those eyes, they weren't human. They were something older, something hungrier, something else. I quit the Lubbock-Albuquerque run after that. Took a job hauling local, sticking to city routes where the lights never fade and the silence never settles. I didn't tell anyone, not my boss, not my buddies at the diner, not even my wife. Who'd believe it? But I couldn't forget. I started digging late at night on forums, old books, anything I could find on Vaughn or Route 285. Most of it was nonsense, UFOs, chupacabras, the usual desert myths. But a few stories stood out, buried in obscure threads or yellowed newspaper clippings. One was from a trucker in '82 who'd seen wild men at the rest stop, growling and chasing his rig until he nearly wrecked. Another was a police report from '96, a missing person case. A drifter last seen near Vaughn, his campsite found torn apart, blood on the ground but no body. And then there was an old Navajo story, passed down from a forum post by someone claiming to be a medicine man's son. It spoke of skinned dogs, men who made pacts with dark things in the desert, trading their humanity for power. They roamed the thin spots, hunting anyone foolish enough to linger. I don't know what I believe anymore. Maybe it was a pack of tweakers, high out of their minds. Maybe it was something else, something the desert's been hiding since before the highways were built. All I know is I'm done with 285. I keep a rosary on my dash now, and a knife under the seat. And when I drive at night, I don't stop, no matter how tired I am. Sometimes, when the road's quiet and the moon's low, I swear I hear it, a faint bark out in the dark. I turn up the radio and keep driving, praying it's just my imagination. But deep down, I know better. The Vaughn growler's still out there, waiting for the next fool to pull over. Driving from Ely to Fallon, I was on a stretch with no lights. Perfectly dark. I notice someone standing on the side of the road. As I pass him, my headlights sweep across his figure, and for a fleeting moment, his face is fully illuminated. I wish I could unsee it. His posture was unnaturally rigid, like a mannequin propped up in the desert. He wore a gray suit, pristine despite the dust and grit of Nevada's Highway 50, the so-called loneliest road in America. But it was his face that sent a jolt through me, pale, almost waxy, with features that didn't quite align, like a mask molded by someone who'd only heard humans described secondhand. His eyes, though they locked onto mine for half a second, cutting through the glare of my high beams. It wasn't the dazed squint of someone caught in headlights. No, he was looking at me, not my truck, with an intensity that made my skin crawl. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my old Ford rattling over the uneven pavement. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just a hitchhiker, maybe some eccentric out here in the middle of nowhere. But who wears a suit in the desert at 2 a.m.? And that face! I couldn't stop picturing it. My CB radio crackled, spitting out sharp, erratic chirps, not the usual trucker chatter or static. I was nearing Austin, maybe 20 miles out, but the signal felt wrong, like something was trying to break through. I turned the knob to silence it, but the chirps kept coming, irregular and piercing, like Morse code from a machine that didn't know the alphabet. I've driven this route dozens of times, hauling freight across Nevada's empty stretches. I'm used to the isolation, the long silences broken only by the hum of my engine or the occasional coyote darting across the road. But that night, October 17th, 2024, something was off. The air felt heavy, like the desert was holding its breath. I kept glancing in my rearview mirror, half expecting to see that guy sprinting after me, his mask face grinning under the stars. Nothing but darkness stared back. About 10 minutes later, the chirping on the CB stopped, replaced by a low hum, almost like a voice trying to form words but failing. I turned it off completely, my hands shaking. I told myself I was just tired, that the guy was probably some drifter, and my brain was filling in the gaps with horror movie nonsense. But then my headlights flickered, not the usual dimming from a loose connection, but a rapid strobe, like someone was flipping a switch. The road ahead blinked in and out, and for a split second, I thought I saw him again, standing dead center in the lane, his gray suit glowing under my beams. I slammed on the brakes, my tires screeching as the truck fishtailed. My heart pounded so hard I thought it had burst. When the truck stopped, the road was empty. No man, no suit, just the endless black ribbon of Highway 50 stretching into the void. My headlights steadied, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me from the sagebrush. I sat there, engine idling, trying to catch my breath. I checked my mirrors, my side windows, nothing. But the hairs on my neck wouldn't settle. I grabbed my flashlight from the glove box, a heavy mag light I keep for emergencies, and stepped out, leaving the engine running. The desert was silent, not even a cricket or a breeze to break the stillness. I swept the beam across the roadside, expecting to see, I don't know, tracks, a discarded suit, anything to prove I wasn't losing it. That's when I heard it, a faint, rhythmic clicking, like metal tapping stone, coming from behind my truck. I spun around, flashlight shaking in my hand, but the light didn't reach far enough. The clicking stopped, then started again, closer. I backed toward the cab, my boots crunching on the gravel louder than I liked. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice cracking. No answer, just that damn clicking. now joined by a soft rustle like fabric dragging through dirt. I climbed back into the cab, locked the doors, and peeled out, my tires spitting gravel. I didn't look back. By the time I hit Austin, a tiny speck of a town with a gas station and a few scattered houses, I was a mess. My hands were clammy, my shirt soaked with sweat despite the chilly night. I pulled into the station, the only place open, and sat there under the fluorescent lights, trying to piece together what had happened. The clerk, an older guy with a weathered face, gave me a curious look when I bought a coffee I didn't need. "You okay, buddy?" he asked. I mumbled something about a long night, and asked if he'd seen anyone weird on the road lately. He shrugged. "Just the usual drifters. Highway 50's got its ghosts, though. You see something?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. Ghosts don't wear suits. Ghosts don't stare into your soul like they're reading your thoughts. I got back in my truck and kept driving, checking my mirrors every few seconds. The CB stayed off. The rest of the drive to Fallon was uneventful, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd left something behind, or that something had followed me. When I got home, I didn't sleep. I scoured the internet for anything about Highway 50, strange sightings, men in suits, anything that might explain what I saw. I found the usual: UFO stories, Area 51 conspiracies, tales of missing hitchhikers. Nothing about a guy in a gray suit with a face like a nightmare. I posted about it on a forum, one of those late-night threads where truckers swap stories about weird shit on the road. A few guys chimed in with their own tales, shadows that moved wrong, voices on dead channels, but no one had seen my guy. One user, DesertRat67, messaged me privately. "You saw the suit man, don't go back to that stretch. He doesn't forget faces." I laughed it off, or tried to. But the message stuck with me. I took a different route for my next haul, adding hours to my trip just to avoid Highway 50. Things were fine for a week, but then my CB started acting up again, even on I-80. Chirps, clicks, that same low hum. I had it checked by a buddy who's good with radios. He said it was fine, no shorts, no interference. "Maybe you're picking up something that ain't there," he joked. I didn't laugh. 2 nights ago, I was parked at a rest stop outside Reno, catching a few hours of sleep in my cab. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to a tapping on my window, soft, deliberate, like a knuckle rapping glass. I bolted upright, grabbing my mag light. The lot was empty, just my truck and a couple of semis 100 yards off. I shone the light outside, my breath fogging the window. Nothing. But when I looked down, there was a smudge on the glass, like a fingerprint, but too long, too thin to be human. I wiped it off with my sleeve, my hands shaking so bad I could barely grip the fabric. Last night, I dreamed about him. I was driving Highway 50 again, but the road never ended, just kept stretching into the dark. He was there, standing every few miles, always in that gray suit, always with that face. Each time I passed, he was closer, until he was in the passenger seat, staring at me with those hollow eyes. I woke up screaming, my sheets soaked. My CB was on, chirping softly, even though I'd unplugged it. I don't know what he was, or what he wanted. Maybe he's still out there, waiting for me to drive that stretch again. Maybe he's closer than that. I'm taking a break from trucking, maybe for good. I can't handle the thought of seeing him again, of feeling those eyes on me. If you're ever on Highway 50 between Ely and Austin, keep your eyes on the road. Don't look at the shadows. And if you see a man in a gray suit, don't stop. Don't look at his face. Just drive, and pray he doesn't follow you home. Oklahoma. I stopped at an off-ramp along I-40 to stretch out and take a breather. As I'm smoking a cigarette, a little girl from some direction I couldn't figure out giggles and says, "Hi, mister." My initial reaction was, the fuck is a little kid doing out here at this time? It was well past midnight, the kind of hour where the world feels like it's holding its breath. The air was thick with the scent of dust and diesel, and the only light came from the faint glow of my truck's headlights and the ember of my cigarette. I was alone, or so I thought. I flicked my eyes around, scanning the darkness. The off-ramp was desolate, just a strip of cracked asphalt flanked by scrubby grass and a ditch that disappeared into the shadows. No cars, no houses, no signs of life except for that giggle, high and clear, like a bell cutting through the silence. I called out, "Hey kid, you okay?" My voice sounded too loud, like it didn't belong here. "Hi," she said again, her voice closer now, but still impossible to pin down. It was like it came from the air itself, floating around me. I turned in a slow circle, my boots crunching on the gravel. Nothing. Just the hum of the highway in the distance and the faint rustle of wind through the dry grass. "Look, where's your mom or dad?" I asked, trying to keep my tone steady. I wasn't scared, not exactly, but there was a prickle on the back of my neck, the kind you get when you know something's off. I'm a trucker, been hauling freight across the country for 15 years. I've seen weird shit, ghostly hitchhikers, lights in the sky, even a coyote that stared at me like it knew its name. But a kid out here in the middle of nowhere? That was a new one. "My mommy says you'll be okay, don't worry." Her voice was cheerful, sing-song, like she was telling me the sky was blue. I froze, the cigarette halfway to my lips. What the hell did that mean? "Hey kid, what are you talking about?" I said louder now, tossing the cigarette to the ground and grinding it out. "Come out where I can see you. This ain't a place to play around." My heart was starting to thud, and I couldn't tell if it was from annoyance or something else. I took a step toward the truck, my hand on the door handle, ready to climb back in and get out of there. No answer. Just silence, heavy and unnatural, like the world had swallowed the wind and the highway noise. I stood there, straining my ears, waiting for another giggle, another word, anything. Then it hit me, a feeling sudden and sharp, like someone was standing right next to me. Not behind me, not in front, but right there, close enough that I should have felt their breath or heard their heartbeat. I whipped my head around, expecting to see someone, anyone, but there was nothing. Just the empty off-ramp and my truck, its engine ticking as it cooled. The weirdest part? It didn't feel bad. Not threatening, not evil, just present. Like someone had stepped up to keep me company, quiet and calm. I don't know why, but it settled me. My pulse slowed, and I let out a shaky breath. "All right, kid," I muttered, half to myself, "you win. I'm out of here." I finished my cigarette, climbed back into the cab, and pulled onto the highway, the girl's words echoing in my head. "You'll be okay, don't worry." I drove for another hour, the road stretching out like a black ribbon under my headlights. The radio was off, and I was alone with my thoughts, trying to make sense of what had happened. Was the kid real? A hallucination from too many late nights and energy drinks? Or something else, something I didn't want to name? I've heard stories from other truckers, ghosts of kids who died in wrecks, spirits that linger on lonely stretches of road. I never put much stock in them, but now, I wasn't so sure. Then my fuel light blinked on. "Shit," I hissed, glancing at the gauge. I'd meant to fill up at the last stop, but got distracted by the girl and that weird feeling. The needle was kissing empty, and I was in the middle of nowhere, miles from anything resembling civilization. I grabbed my GPS, my hands shaking as I punched in a search for the nearest truck stop. The screen lagged, then finally spat out a result, a small station 15 miles away. I did the math in my head. My rig was a gas guzzler, and I was running on fumes. It'd be close. "Come on, baby," I muttered to the truck, patting the dash like it was a horse. "Don't let me down." I pushed the pedal, the engine roaring as I barreled down I-40, praying I'd make it. The miles ticked by agonizingly slow, and every time the truck shuddered or the engine coughed, my heart jumped into my throat. I kept seeing that little girl in my mind, her voice so clear. "You'll be okay, don't worry." 10 miles to go. 5. 2. The truck started sputtering, the wheel jerking in my hands as the engine starved. "No, no, no," I growled, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me alive. The GPS chimed, and I saw the faint glow of the truck stop up ahead, its neon sign flickering like a beacon. I coaxed the rig forward, the sputtering getting worse, until I was practically crawling. By some miracle, I rolled into the fuel line just as the engine gave one last cough and died. I sat there, hands still on the wheel, my breath coming in short gasps. I'd made it. Barely. I climbed out, legs shaky, and started fueling up, the cold night air hitting my face like a slap. It wasn't until the pump was running that it hit me. What the hell had happened back at that off-ramp? That girl. Her words. The feeling of someone standing next to me. And now this, running out of fuel right as I reached the pump? It was too much to be a coincidence. I'm not a religious guy, not even spiritual, but there was no denying it. Something had looked out for me tonight. Something had known I'd need to make it to this truck stop, and it had made sure I did. I finished fueling and went inside to pay. The clerk, an older guy with a gray beard and tired eyes, barely looked up from his magazine. "Rough night?" he asked as I slid my card across the counter. "You could say that," I muttered. I hesitated, then decided to take a shot. "Hey, you ever hear anything weird about that off-ramp back at mile marker 237? Like ghost stories or anything?" The clerk raised an eyebrow, setting his magazine down. Mile marker 237? That's the one just past the Old Way station, right? I nodded, and he leaned back in his chair, scratching his chin. Yeah, folks talk about that stretch sometimes. Say it's haunted. Truckers see all kinds of shit out there, lights, voices, even kids running around. Story goes there was a bad wreck back in the 80s. Family got T-boned by a semi. Mom and her little girl didn't make it. My stomach dropped. A little girl? He nodded, his eyes narrowing like he was sizing me up. Yup. Blonde, maybe 6 or 7. Some drivers say she talks to M, tells M stuff. Creeps most of them out, but nobody's ever said she's mean or nothing. Why? You see something? I forced a laugh, shaking my head. Nah, just heard some guys talking at a diner. Curious is all. I grabbed my receipt and headed back to the truck, my mind racing. Blonde, 6 or 7. I hadn't seen the girl, but her voice it fit. And what she'd said, my mommy says you'll be okay. Was that her mom, standing next to me? Watching over me? I climbed into the cab and sat there for a long time, staring out at the empty lot. I didn't know what to believe. Maybe it was just luck that I'd made it to the pump. Maybe the girl was a trick of my tired mind, her voice some weird echo of the wind. But deep down I knew better. Something had happened out there, something I couldn't explain. And whatever it was, it had saved my ass. I drove through the rest of the night, the highway stretching out like it always did. But I kept my eyes on the rearview mirror, half expecting to see a little girl in the back seat, giggling and waving. She never showed, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was still out there, her and her mom, watching over the lonely roads of Oklahoma. I don't stop at that off-ramp anymore. I make sure to fuel up early, keep my tank above half, and I don't pull over unless I'm at a proper rest area. But sometimes, when the road gets quiet and the night presses in, I hear that giggle in my head clear as day. And I wonder if she's still out there, waiting for the next driver who needs a little help to make it through the night. It was 4 years ago. I'd just finished a drop in Miami, electronics, was deadheading back west toward Naples before heading north to a warehouse in Ocala. I figured I'd save time and skip I-75. Big mistake. I took US 41 through the glades. 2-lane blacktop, nothing but swamp and gators on either side. Locals call it Alligator Alley, but this was the old one, not the interstate. No lights. No guardrails. Just water and trees. I'd been rolling for hours. It was around 1 a.m. when I passed mile marker 65. I remember it because I glanced at my GPS just before it glitched out. Screen went fuzzy like static. Thought it was just Everglades' signal being crap again. That's when I saw them. 2 red lights ahead, low to the ground, off to the right shoulder. I figured it was a car or maybe some road flares. As I got closer, I realized they weren't taillights, they were eyes. Like an animal's. But bigger. Higher. Too far apart to be deer, and too red, glowing, not reflecting. I slowed the rig. Something about them, they didn't move. Didn't blink. Just stared. I kicked on my brights. Nothing. The second the lights hit, where the eyes had been, gone. Not like whatever it was ran off. Just vanished. There was nothing there. No trees disturbed, no animal tracks in the wet gravel. Just empty road. I leaned forward in the cab, scanning the brush. Rolled down my window to listen. That's when I noticed it. Silence. No bugs. No frogs. Not even the rumble of my own engine, like the sound had been sucked out of the air. You ever hear silence so thick it makes your ears ring? Then I felt it, like a weight pressing down on my chest. Not a panic attack, I've had those. This was different. Like something was leaning on me. Like something was reaching through the cab of the truck and into my lungs. My heart. My soul. I don't scare easy. You drive trucks long enough, you learn to deal with weirdos, storms, even people trying to climb your trailer in the dead of night. But this was wrong. Ancient wrong. I could feel it looking at me, through me. And the worst part, I couldn't move. I was frozen, one hand on the wheel, the other near the window crank. My body didn't want to move. Like whatever was out there wanted me still. Then the CB squawked. White noise. Loud. Piercing. Leave. One word. Just one. A voice I didn't recognize. Low. Rough. Not from any other driver on 19. No breaker call, no handle. Just leave. That broke the spell. I slammed the window shut, floored the pedal, and hauled ass down that road like the devil himself was chasing my rear axles. I didn't look back. Not once. Because deep down, I knew something was behind me. Not chasing. Just following. Watching. I didn't stop until I hit the truck stop just outside Naples. Jumped out of the cab and puked right next to the fuel island. Sat there on the concrete like a damn rookie for 20 minutes before I could even light a smoke. Few days later, I was at a diner off I-10 swapping stories with an old-timer. I told him about mile marker 65, didn't even get to the eyes part before he held up a hand and said, "Say no more." You saw the red lights, huh? He'd seen them too, so had two other drivers he knew. One swerved off the road trying to avoid them and ended up half-drowned in a swamp. The other refused to speak after that night, quit trucking, moved up to Tennessee. Never touched a rig again. Some say it's an old Makasuki spirit. Others say it's just the road remembering all the blood it's soaked up over the years. You know how many bodies they've pulled out of that swamp? Hell, how many they haven't? I don't know what it was. But I do know one thing. If you're ever driving US 41 at night and see two red eyes staring at you near mile marker 65, don't stop. Don't blink. Don't even breathe. Just drive. And if your CB starts whispering things that don't make sense, turn it off. Or whatever's out there might decide to ride with you a while.